but leaves Scotland to captain a London-registered trading ship and heads off to Tobago. But his old habits die hard, and the new crew mutinies against him, and this time he kills the leader of the rebellion with a sword. Now a murderer, John Paul abandons his ship and runs away to the American colonies and ends up in Virginia. There, he changes his name to John Paul Jones and decides to lay low. Though he always had believed he was destined for greatness, he had at last accepted this was probably not his fate. But everything changes in April of 1775 when British forces clash with rebel colonists at the Battle of Lexington, sparking the American War for Independence. There was no turning back from what was later called the Shot Heard Round the World, and within a month, thousands of British troops pour into the colonies. The newly formed Continental Navy puts out calls for experienced sailors to join the fight to help defend the American coast, and former ship captain John Paul volunteers for service. Now, I think it's important to understand just what our guy John Paul Jones and the rest of the Continental Navy was up against. The colonies had a few dozen ships in their fleet, made up of mostly converted merchant and fishing vessels, and these men had the unenviable task of going up against the most powerful navy in the world, who had hundreds of warships at their disposal. Trying to engage the British in a direct battle would have been instant death, so instead, the Continental Navy focuses on raiding merchant and supply ships, ports, and prisons. John Paul takes to this unconventional warfare like a duck to water, and he soon rises through the ranks, and by the end of 1776, he's made a captain with command of his own ship. But the ship John Paul is given is a sloop, and he's constantly passed over for command of the bigger, more powerful warships. He begins to make a stink about it, and eventually he gets so annoying that the higher-ups tell him to take his ship, the USS Ranger, to France to, quote, do things that help the American war effort. Basically, they were just trying to get rid of him. And so, on November 1st, 1777, with no clear orders and a chip on his shoulder, John Paul set sail for the Old World. Upon arrival in France, the captain meets Benjamin Franklin, who was serving as one of America's ambassadors. Franklin also initially found John Paul to be arrogant and kind of annoying, but over time, they became friends. John Paul was fearless and had bold plans on how to take the fight to the British, and soon he proved he was exactly what an underdog Continental Navy needed.